Okay, so we're going to look at a still life here, some of the objects from my altar, and talk a little bit about dividing space. Um, First here with the Union Jack, and then we're going to talk about finding locations and thinking about negative space and proportional relationships. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to start by dividing the space. And this is just going to be that Union Jack that I showed you already. And so to do that, I'm just going to go corner to corner like we did before, like so. And then I'm just going to go horizontal and vertical. Now I'm going to use the digital tools to my benefit here. There's a little perspective guide on this, which is really helpful for doing vertical and horizontal lines. So I'm just going to use that to help me do my vertical and horizontal lines here. Whoops, just moved that. That's not right. Lock that. There we go. Now I can do that. Okay. So when we do this, I can see that, I can locate the center of my page. Now, when I look at this composition now, I have 4 quadrants, and I can see the locations of the items within those quadrants. When we're thinking about a situation like this, compositionally, a couple things to think about. That's important to kind of let's just talk about them right now in terms of like building a composition. So in composition, uh, we want to think about engagement, and this doesn't matter if you're doing composition in a film or composition in a room or composition in a painting or composition in a musical score, right? There's this idea of engagement. Um, your job as a drawing student in the foundations class is not just learning how to render things realistically, it's also learning how to learn the skill of design and via design um, engagement. There's not much point in making something that people won't engage with. And primarily, you're just trying to make me engage right now, right? That's your primary goal. But in the future, it could be anybody. Engagement is really important. And I think about this from the point of view of like interior design students sometimes, just because a lot of times we get interior design students in the class, and I think how does what we're doing in drawing, what are we doing in design, how does that translate to space? And so this is one of those ways that we think about this. And I think about this when I'm doing performance art. When I design a space, how do I engage somebody in that space? How do I build a composition? And how does the choreography that I utilize to move through that space activate, pause, signify conceptual goals? So we have this composition that I built for you. Okay, now I built this composition knowing about composition. Okay, so let's just look real fast at kind of some of the things that I did. My standing point, which is the place that I'm standing, is here. Okay, so that's like the place that I'm looking. And I tried to get my eye level to be right around sort of like the center of the space. Okay, so if my eye level is in the center, then I'm not really going to have a lot of like 3-point perspective, meaning I'm not looking up and I'm not looking down very much. Okay, so I'm not going to get distortion. I did have to correct this photograph a little bit, even though I took it very Um, I tried to take it very parallel to the top of this altar. Um, the camera has a wide angle lens, and then also if we think about the camera, right? If we think about our camera on our phones, like on my iPhone, the camera is here. Okay. And so if this is my camera here, then when I look through the screen, that can be a bit of a distortion. And the other thing is that our camera phones, are designed to capture a lot of information. And so, like, the lens itself has a little bit of a convexness to it. So it's like a little bit, a wee little bit of a fisheye. And so that like affects the way that space looks. So when I actually took this photograph and I imported it into Sketchbook here, the candle was not vertical. It was kind of like this. Okay. And the reason being was because of the distortion from the camera. So then I had to use my tool to straighten that. And you'll see that a lot in photographs. Like if you take a picture of a hallway, the sides of the hallway will, you'll see it really clearly in the vertical lines. What was supposed to be vertical is actually at an angle, and so you have that distortion. So we're not going to really talk about perspective, but just to clarify, like in an image like this, which I try to set up a very specific way, um, you know, there's not, like I said, there's not going to be vertical line and distortion. And primarily, this is not a 1 point perspective because we don't really have, other than the candle itself, we don't really have anything that's a horizontal plane facing us exactly. And so maybe down here we could be like, well, we did have the edge of the bookshelf down here, and that's true. Um, but I can see the sides of things like here, and I can see like this here, and I can see the side of this here. I can see the side of this here and this there. And so whenever I have corners, those objects are going to be in 2 point perspective. Okay. We're going to talk about perspective more later, but I'm just kind of like explaining. So to draw this in a 1 point perspective, I'd have to force things. And so we're not going to do that. I'm just deleting all this. But I knew that because it was a 2 point perspective, my vertical lines would still be vertical. So until you get into 3 point perspective, vertical lines will always be vertical. Okay, so we're talking about perspective later. So if that doesn't make sense, all I need you to know is that the vertical line should be vertical. Okay, this uh, tarot card is not, I didn't place it vertically, so it's not a vertical line. Okay, so we're kind of like looking at this space, and now we've found our 4 quadrants. Okay, so we can tell from this the way that this is designed with this composition that the center of the candle is not in the center of the space, right? It's slightly divided like this from there to there is smaller than there to there. Okay, and so we know then that the candle is not dead center in the composition. Okay, that is one of the ways to create engagement. When you place something in the dead center of a composition, a lot of times it goes really flat. And so we want to kind of avoid that. And what we're thinking a lot about here is energy. And energy, I'm going to write here energy. Okay. So energy is, you know, I think the white was a bit better. The energy is the way that we engage the viewer and keep the viewer engaged. Okay. And so there are certain types of things I think that happen in nature that are really, in particular, very difficult to actually show because, like, they look fake. And one of the things that I think makes things look fake is when everything is dead center. Okay. So we want to think a lot about energy. So things that are like really helping us to understand energy here uh, and give us energy within the composition are diagonals. Okay, so that's a diagonal. This is a diagonal. This is a diagonal. This is a diagonal. Okay, so diagonals give us energy. And then something else that's giving us energy is just the weight of the composition. So the distribution of objects within the space is also giving us energy. It's giving us energy. um, and so when we're thinking about balance, when things are asymmetrical, there's a bit more energy. And so here we're thinking about the balance between the positive and the negative space. So the positive forms perhaps being we could either say that the positive forms are just the objects, or we could say the positive forms are the objects, including the top of the altar. Okay, so then this is all negative and this is all positive. Okay, so it could also be, I also like to think about, like, depending on your focus, that could kind of change. Like you could change the focus that you want to appear in the composition in terms of positive and negative space by making a decision like, okay, the altar knife is the only thing that is positive. Okay, so now we have a little bit of an idea about things that create energy. So again, we have diagonals, okay, that create energy. And we have curves, those create energy. And then things that sort of create stagnation are vertical lines and horizontal lines. Okay, so those things create stagnation, um, or pause might be a nicer way to say it. Okay, so a good composition has a balance between energy and pause. Okay, and um, stagnation, I guess, would be a way to think about it, would be like that you have perhaps in an unbalanced composition, you create stagnation. Like the viewer cannot escape that area because everything is all vertical, all horizontal, and everything is just static. So we want to think about the balance between the energy, okay, and the pause. Okay. And so when we build a composition, we are really trying to think this way. So we have our composition here. Okay, we can look and see how things are distributed throughout the space. And so we can also even take our sections now and we can divide them again. Okay. And when we do that, we can start to see that, again, we have an opportunity to consider our distribution. So the utilization of a grid in drawing has been a long practice. We even have images from the Northern Renaissance, for instance, of a drawing machine by Albrecht Dürer that utilizes a grid that could be looked through to create an understanding of foreshortened space, or says foreshortened space is space where something is in front of something else, and so there's some distortion as things recede to the back. So now we can say, okay, we can say, well, what's in this space? Okay, not a whole lot. What's in this space? Not a whole lot. Okay, same thing over here, not a whole lot. Okay, now as we move to here, like boom, now we have interaction with forms. We have interaction with forms and interaction with forms just a little bit here in that top area. And so we can see as we go through here that there's kind of like a mixture of space that has forms and space that does not have forms. Again, we're thinking about balance and we're thinking about engagement. So if every section is really, really full, then the viewer isn't really going to know where to look. So the reason, I think that this is really important when we start thinking about a drawing is we want to think about the composition in terms of like, how am I going to set up the drawing? How am I going to create the space? And that actually begins with the way that you set up your still life and your standing point to the still life. This is really hard to achieve in a classroom, and there's so many students, not everyone's going to have a good point of view. But it is something that when you set up a drawing at home this quarter, it gives you a chance to really think about how am I going to distribute my forms. So let's say now I've made that decision of how to distribute my forms, because I have, it's right here. So I divided the space and I'm looking at the space. And I'm thinking, okay, so where is the candle to the center? Where is the swan to the center? Where is the tarot card to the center? Where is the altar knife to the center? Where is the rock to the center? And I'm thinking about sort of like the location of those things in relationship to myself. And again, where I am is the standing point. Okay. So when I begin to assess the space, I need to sort of consider how these things are related to me. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you what this looks like from above. So this is from above. Now, notice like the difference here. If you look really closely between this and this, you should be able to see that actually there's a rock here. It's actually a really cool rock. It came from Ireland, and um, it is from what's it called? The Giant's Causeway, which is like this geological formation that looks like extremely man-made, but it's actually just like these natural, almost like geometric shaped rocks that have pushed up through the Earth's core and created like a causeway almost through this certain part of um, I can't remember if it's a sea or if it's part of the Atlantic. Please excuse me that I don't know that. It was brought to me by somebody, and so it's like this extremely amazing rock. Now I'm using it to hold up the tarot card, and so again, if we move away from this point of view from above and we go to this point of view, it's barely visible. It's just right here. So what's important here is to recognize that changing your point of view alters the visibility of forms. And that's why a lot of times during class, I'll have you like rotate around a still life so you can see it from multiple angles. And this is actually really important to do when you are working with a model. If the model is facing you in a chair, you should go to the back to see what the chair looks like in order to understand how it is affecting the weight distribution of the model from the front. And so then if we look at the same still life and we look at it from one side, we can see it's a very different distribution of forms. Different objects are overlapping other objects based on which ones are in front and which ones are behind. And the same thing here. Okay. And so these spaces are changing each time. So even here where the distribution of the cylinder is not that much different from the front standing point view, we do have a change in the rest of the distribution because, of course, this is a symmetrical form. So if the standing point is anything similar to what it is from the front, then we're going to get a similar sort of distribution, perhaps based on where I took the photograph from and where I've cropped the photograph. Okay. So really important to think about is the distribution of positive to negative space. So if we go back, let's go back to the front because I think that's the easiest one, and I did that on purpose. When we think about the distribution of positive negative space, we're thinking about the relationship of these forms. So we have a rock, we have a knife, we have a candle, we have a tarot card, and we have a swan. Oops, what form? Ah, there we go. Okay. Now, you could read this as a composite shape. You could read this as a composite shape. So composite shape being like two forms that can kind of blend together to make one form. And so in this case, these things are touching, so they could be read as a composite shape. Okay. Now, again, I want to just sort of say this again so we can think about it. Angle, okay, angle, vertical. So there's a balance there. Okay. Let's look at the positive and negative space distribution. So let's say we're going to consider this positive. We're going to consider this positive. And consider this positive. Okay, so let's see. Hopefully this will work like beautifully and I won't have to cry. Yay, look at that, it worked. Positive and negative space. Okay, so when we evaluate this, what's really important to consider here is the relationships of the forms to one another. Okay, so like what is, oh, sorry, wrong color. So what is this distance? What is this distance? So the negative space is the space between the forms, and it can really help us to analyze and consider the interrelationship of forms within space. And what's cool and interesting and helpful and necessary is that this space here can only be that space from this point of view. There's your standing point again. And so while you're drawing, if you get this space correct and you get these, spaces all correct, then you will get a correct drawing. If you get those spaces wrong, then the drawing won't be correct. Okay. And so sounds very logical, sounds very easy, sounds like a very simple way to think about things. However, of course, it's very difficult to do. But it's not as difficult as you think. Because what is helpful is understanding how to measure these distances and how to do what we call sighting. So to sight these distances and, in particular, the angles between them. Okay, so if we go back to this, right, if we go back, okay. Now, within this space, these objects are only existing in these locations. Okay, I'm just sort of like we've already drawn them. Okay, so they only exist in these locations. And what's important first is to think about what is in front of what. And by understanding what is in front of what, you start to understand how they overlap, which helps you to understand their space. Now, if we again go back to the aerial view, we can see in the aerial view that they are located in such a way that from above, they are, especially here, right, with the candle, we can see that it gives the illusion that the candle, is covering the knife. But then when we look from the front, we don't see that. We see quite a lot of space. So when we're planning our space and thinking about our space and the relationships in our space, we want to really kind of be considering what our point of view is, because as you can see, changing the point of view changes the composition entirely. Within the space itself, too, like when we're looking at our Union Jack, we can see, if we were using that distance at the left to the right side of the cylinder to help us understand the location of the candle, here that distance is quite different than what we have here, right? Because here we can see it's actually a bit longer. Now, I tried to take the pictures in such a way that there wasn't a lot of distortion based on my standing point. It's not perfect, but that was my attempt. So what we're seeing is just the distortion between the top view, bird's eye view, we would call this, and more of just an eye level view. So as we start to move around the still life, we can see how all these distances change. Now the candle isn't near the center if we divide it of the same frame. And so the thing to recognize there, right, is like if you get the location of the candle even slightly wrong, then you're changing the point of view that you're drawing from. And so when that becomes problematic is when obviously you're trying to present the viewer with one point of view and you start to mix them together. And so the candle looks like one point of view and the tarot card looks like another point of view, and things aren't lining up, which becomes really important when we start thinking about the phase, which is like how things line up. Okay. And so when we're trying to draw something that's symmetrical, it really shows. When things are a little bit more asymmetrical like this, it's kind of easier to, it might be less impactful if you get something slightly off. But if this was fully symmetrical, I think you would really see it. So we know where the center of the page is. We can kind of imagine how we can divide the space up based on what we've already done. We've already established, positive and negative space. So what's next is to kind of like try to figure out where these things are located to one another. One of the best tools that you have is the angles that exist between points of reference. And so this starts to look a little bit like mathematics. And triangulation, the outside edge of the cylinder. I can find this angle. Now, if I get the angle wrong in my drawing, so say my angle is this, then you can see that the location of this tip of the knife would be over here. Well, that's not the way it is. And so we want to try to locate these angles to help us identify the exact location of points of reference. So this line now is actually one of the ways that we can help to figure out how tall the candle is comparative to the knife, but we're also figuring out its location. So if I take another angle now and I measure from here to here, Okay. Now, again, this is helping me define location, but also it just helped me define the width. If I was drawing this and I was measuring, okay, I'm going to teach you how to measure this with a bamboo skewer. I would not just check it once. I would always check things multiple times because you can make issues with, you can make mistakes when you're measuring. But if you measure something from four different angles from like two different locations, then you're going to get a much more precise reading. So I'm actually going to go from this point here to the outside edge of the knife there and to there. And so now I have measured and located the outside edges of the cylinder from two important reference points. And of course, I could even do that from a third point, like here. The more points I use, the more likely it is I'm going to find the correct location. So then I would say, well, okay, well, now I know where the top of the cylinder is. Where's the bottom of the cylinder? I could pick the same exact points and I would just isolate important locations and measure the angles. In this situation, I wouldn't pick this point to measure from because it's too close. I might pick like this point here. Okay. So now I've been able to establish the top and the bottom location, which is going to give me the entire height. Okay. So if I go around the still life and I do this for all of the objects, oh, that's the same color as our background lines, but I think it's okay. Then I can find sort of precisely where things sit to one another. So the Liverpool Football Club's anthem is "You'll Never Walk Alone." I actually have it on record. It's a really old record. Um, and is it called "You Never Walk Alone" or "Walk On"? I think it's called "Walk On." It's actually "Walk On." So the reason I'm saying this is because in drawing, if you actually utilize these approaches, you will never draw alone. Sorry, it just made me think of Liverpool. So when figuring out the location of these forms, I can use all these angles to help me discover exactly where something exists. It's pretty cool and really helpful. And all of it began with our Union Jack. Now, let's also do this. Let's look at the way that we can utilize positive and negative space to help us draw. So I'm actually going to consider now, I'm going to actually build my positive space, and I'm considering everything in addition to the objects. I'm also considering the altar as positive. Whoops. Even this little space in here has to be taken away. Okay, so now all of that space is negative. Whee! That didn't work at all. Why didn't that work? I must have not connected it somewhere. I don't see it not connected. Oh, there it is. Nope, that wasn't it. Why are you doing this to me? Anyway, well, we're not gonna let this stop us. We're gonna go rogue here. So this is all gonna be negative space. Just imagine I'm precisely drawing that right up to the edge. Don't pay any attention to how I'm not going right up to the contour. I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. Okay, there we go. That was the theme to Rocky, in case you've never seen Rocky. Rocky was directed by, starred, and written by Sylvester Stallone, which is pretty cool considering he did that. Okay, so now I have my positive forms with my negative space. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to our drawing tool, our angles, because this can be really helpful as well. So say I just start off by finding, oh, right, I got to change that. Finding the angle that is here. Maybe something like that. Now, this now gives me a measurable negative space that I can use to measure distance between this corner and this top and that intersection of contours. I could pull this down here. Okay, so these are all intersections of contours. Ooh, let's see if it works. Yes, there we go. And so we are now able to look at this specific location and say that this triangle now is a certain size and has a certain boundary. So again, if I understand that in my drawing, I can look at this triangle that I drew and say, okay, is this triangle the same as what I see? Is this triangle the same as what I see? And if it's not, then that means you should remeasure and remeasure and remeasure and figure out where you've gone wrong. Okay. And so the negative space can be very helpful. Negative space can also help us draw like something specific. So if we come down the contour of the High Priestess card here, and we come over here and we draw the outside contour of the swan's head, okay, I get a negative space, and it has a very distinct and very specific part in the swan's head. Or correct, that means I've got that part of the drawing. You always have these things to help you to draw things correctly. And this is actually one of the reasons why we begin with contour, because when we begin with contour, then we're able to see and learn and figure out what edges look like.